Hey guys, Mr. Riz, here to help you with the 5.4, 5.6, basically the end of Chapter 5 review worksheet. So we're going to go through this together, see if we have any problems or issues, and if you do, pause the video, watch it over again, and see if you can get some help with it. All right, so first part, we're going to be adding these two functions together. So all we need to do when we're looking at f of x plus g of x, we just got to add like terms. So we'll start off with our x squared, that's the highest term we have here, so we got 3x squared. And then moving on with our x's, we have a -9 plus a -4. And so -9 plus a -4, that'd be a -13x. And then we have a -11 plus 7. And -11 plus 7, that would be a -4. And there's the answer. Now, when it comes to subtracting, you might want to write it out as like 3x squared minus 9x minus 11 minus 7 minus 4x. Because subtraction order does matter. So we start out, we have 3x squared. By itself, it's positive. But when we're subtracting here, we have -9x minus -4. So that's going to be like -9x plus 4, which would be a -5x. And then same thing here with the 11. We have -11 minus 7. And -11 minus 7 would be a -18. So if you aren't careful with the order, you could switch them around and end up getting a positive 5 or a positive 18, and that'd be incorrect. Okay, next, suppose the demand, or D, for a company product at a cost X is predicted by the function D of X equals this, and the price of that the company can charge for the product is given by P of X. Finds the company's revenue. All right, so we have to know a little bit about some math here and know what a revenue is. So if we think about it here, if we're looking at a revenue or like the total amount of money they would make, it would ever be the revenue would be the price that they charge times the demand, because you know how much they would charge per how many items they want to buy. So we're going to have to take our function for the demand, which is -0.36x squared plus 810, and we're going to have to times it by the price of x plus 14. All right, so what we need to do here is we need to multiply these two together. We'll multiply the 0.36x squared times the x and times the 14. So we get 0.36x cubed plus, all right, I need to grab a calculator out this. What's 0.36 times 14? 5.04 x squared. All right, then we need to multiply the 810 by the x and the 14. So we have plus 810x, and then plus whatever 810 times 14 is, 11,340. And we would combine like terms, but we don't have any, and so that's it. Okay, last step here is find f of x divided by g of x. Well, f of x is x squared minus 5x minus 36. And then g of x is x minus 9. Now, if you put it down there, that's pretty good, but you might want to double check here. Can we factor this one out? What two numbers multiply together to give us -36, add together to get -5? That would be an x minus 9 and an x plus 4. Now, if you were able to figure out that these x minus 9s would cancel each other out and put x plus 4, you are doing great. All right, so there's the basic polynomials or basic arithmetic with polynomials. Up next, we got composite functions. All right, so what we're going to do first is to figure out the composite functions. What's f of g of 3? So first thing we're going to do is plug 3 into the g function here. So 5 times 3, that's 15. Then we're going to take 15 and plug it into the f function. So what's 3 times 15 minus 2, or 45 minus 2, that's 43. There we go. There's the answer of f of g of 3. Now, when we're figuring out f of g of x, we just take the equation and plug it in. So instead of writing x, we're going to write 3 times 5x, whatever our g of x is, minus 2. So that becomes 15x minus 2. That's all we got. And we can actually kind of double check that this is correct. If we go ahead and take our 3 from our previous problem, if I take 3, plug this into here, 3 times 15 is 45. 45 minus 2 is 43. All right, next, as a member of the Game Shop Rewards Program, you get a 12% discount on purchases, and all sales taxes are subject to an 8% sales tax. Write a function to model the discount and the sales tax and identify the composition function that calculates the final price when you pay Game Shop. Okay, yeah, definitely not GameStop because that'd be a trademark issue. Here we go. So if you get a 12% discount, so that means your discount is equal to, we have a price, right? Times 0.2. And then we actually got to subtract that from the original. So a couple different ways we can figure that out. So if you think about it here, we have a original price for an item minus 0.12 times that. And so there's the discount. And then if we're going to go ahead and figure out the tax is the original item plus 0.08% of that. Okay, so one thing that's kind of nice about math is that it actually doesn't matter if we take the discount or the tax first. What we need to do here is to just kind of do one and then do the other. So if we can go through and take the one function and plug it into the other one, that's going to be good. Now, to make our life simpler, what we can do here is to simplify these equations. If I have 1x minus 0.12x, I get 0.88x. Which, if you think about it, if you get a 12% discount, you're actually only paying 88% of the price. And then if I have 1x plus 0.08x, I get 1.08x, which means that you're paying 108% of the price, which means, yeah, you add a little bit more. So now we have these easier equations. It's going to be easier to take like this and plug it into that instead of taking this equation and plugging it into both of those x's. You get the same answer either way, but this is a little bit easier. So what is 1.08, not x, but times 0.88x? All right, so all we need to do is really just take 1.08, grabbing a calculator, times 0.88, and our answer is 0.9504x. And there's the final price, or basically just 95% of the price of the item. All right, some more composite functions. The cost in dollars to produce X shovels in a factory is given by the function C of X equals 23X plus 480. Okay, so here's the cost function. All right, the number of shovels can produce in H hours is here. Find the rule for, and okay, so what would this be? So if I take this equation here and plug it into there, we would get 23 times 30H plus 480. All right, so we just got to do 23 times 30. 23 times 30 is 690. H plus 480. Now, if we want to find the cost for 8 hours, well, now that we actually have the formula here, all we need to do is to plug in 8 for H and figure out our cost. So 690 times 8 is 5,520, and we'll add 480. Does that actually come out nice? Yeah, an even 6,000. What you could have done as well, if you didn't know, even if you didn't figure out this problem, you could have just off to the side here figure, okay, if I have H hours, I can plug that in, and that means 30 times 8. That means 30 times 8 is what, 240? 240, that means we can make 240 shovels, and we can take that number and plug it in. 23 times 240 plus 480. All right, 23 times 240 is 5520. And you can see we would have got the same answer. So you technically didn't know problem 8 to do problem 9. But if you have problem 8 done, problem 9 is a whole lot easier. All right, so that wraps up section 5.5. 5.6 is inverse functions. All right, so hopefully you remember the inverse functions. All we need to do is flip the x and y's around if we're looking at a table. So, all right, if we got x up here and y down here, we would have, let's see, I'm just going to put the x's down here at the bottom. So it'd be 4, 3, 9, 2, 8, 1. And our corresponding y's, our x's now would be 5, -1, 6, 3, 5, 7. All we did is basically flip the x's and y's around for the inverse because they have opposite points. All right, next, let's let f of x equal 5. Write an equation for f prime and then sketch it on the graph. Okay, so let's first find the inverse. We find that by switching the x and y's. Remember, this is y equals. So we'll change this to x equals 5y minus 1, and we're going to get the y by itself. So x minus 1 is equal to 5y. And then what we would do is divide by 5, so we get y equals x minus 1 over 5. Now, if we were going to sketch them out, the original equation, 5x minus 1, let's see, oh, and these are all scaled by 5, aren't they? So we'll say like 1's here, and we're going to go up 5 over 1. And so we make some points up here, up 5 over 1, up 5 over 1. So we'd keep kind of going like that. I don't know if we would actually, and then we could go down 5 over 1, down 5 over 1. So we'd get a graph that looks kind of like that. Here's the original. And then the inverse, all we could do is flip these points around, flip them, reflect them over. Oop, wrong corner. This is not a perfect square. Flip them over that line for the inverse. Or what we can do is we can kind of change this around. This would be y equals 1x divided by 5 is 1/5 x. Then minus 1 divided by 5 is 1/5. So really this is like just barely, since this is scaled below. And we go down 1 over 5. And we can start, if we keep this pattern going, you can probably see here that these two now look reflected of each other. Don't worry, the one on the test is easier to graph, but there we go. Okay, clear this off. Next problem here, find the inverse function. All right, remember inverse function, just to find it, all we need to do is take this y here and replace it with the x. So we got x equals y squared plus 25. We need to go through and get the x by, or get the y by itself. So we'll minus 25 over. And then to get rid of the square, we square root. Now, every time we take the square root, we technically need to add a plus or minus sign. So there we go. The inverse function is plus or minus the square root of x minus 25. All right, next, sketch the graph of, okay, what would this look like? And we want to verify. So let's make sure we can just write the equation here. That's the biggest part here. And then we'll use Desmos to help sketch the graph. So in fact, let's just, you guys can get Desmos and that should be fine. Let's make sure we can get this. So y, we'll switch them around. So we get x equals 3 minus the cube root of y plus 2. All right, first thing we want to do is let's minus the 3 over. We get x minus 3 is equal to negative cube root of y plus 2. Now we got to get rid of the negative. So then technically, if we divide by a negative or times by -1, we get a negative x plus 3 is equal to the cube root of y plus 2. All right, we'd cube both sides and we would have to cube the whole expression. Now, we are just finding the inverse. So there's really no point of like writing this all out 3 times and going. If you want to, go ahead, or we can just leave this in the cube. And then to get the y by itself, we minus 2. So we get y equals negative x plus 3 cubed minus 2. Or just basically the inverse function is negative x plus 3 cubed minus 2. All right, so check Desmos there to graph. The one on your test will be a whole lot easier than that. And that's really what I'm going to be grading here. Can you actually figure that out? All right. Next, use the composition to determine whether f and g are inverses. So if we remember, if we take the one function and plug it into the other, if they are inverses, we should just get x by itself. So it doesn't matter which one we plug into, either one. I'm just going to take this fraction and plug it into there. So 5 times 1/5 x minus 3 plus 15. If we get an x, they are. So if we distribute the 5 times 1/5 is 1x. 5 times -3 is -15. We have our plus 15, and the minus 15 plus 15 just cancel out to equal x. So yes, they are inverses. All right, one last composition or inverse function here. A coffee can is the shape of the cylinder with the radius height. Find the formula, find the radius of the paint in terms of volume. All right, so if you guys don't know, we could have the volume is pi r squared h. So what they want us to do is find the radius in terms of the volume. So we want to get the radius by itself. All right, so here we go. The radius by itself. First thing we do is divide by h. So v divided by h is equal to, actually equals pi r squared. We could have done two steps at once. And then we got to divide by pi. So v divided by pi h is equal to r squared. And so then what we would need to do is then take the square root. So, and we're dealing with actual real numbers here, so we don't need to put the plus or minus because we would never have like negative volumes or anything like that. So the radius is equal to the square root of v divided by pi h. So there's the first part. Radius equals the square root of v divided by pi h. Alrighty. Are there any restrictions to the formula? There is one restriction here, and that's because we have a fraction and that h cannot equal 0. You can never have a 0 on the bottom. It wouldn't work out. So, and which makes sense too. Like if we have a cylinder, we have to have a height to it. Otherwise, it would just be a flat piece of paper, a flat circle cut on, on a piece of paper. Next, what is the radius of a coffee can if the volume is 46.25 inches cubed and the height is 7.4? Well, now that we have the formula, we can just plug that in. So we got 46.25 pi divided by pi times 7.4. All right, so the pi's cancel each other out. So let's take 46.25 and divide it by 7.4. 46.25 divided by 7.4, using the calculator here, is 6.25, and then use the calculator again to take the square root of that. The square root of 6.25 using the calculator is 2.5. So the radius would be 2.5 inches, which is super easy once we have this formula already by itself. Okay, let's do this next problem here. So we're going to be solving the radicals, and when we have two radicals, it gets extra fun. Okay, so first thing we need to do here is to move one of the radicals over to the other side. So we get radical 2x plus 11 equals radical 5x plus 1 minus 1. All right, we need to square to get rid of this radical, meaning we need to square the side as well to keep it equal. So we get a 2x plus 11, and then what we have to do here is we need to write this out twice so we can FOIL it. Okay, so we get the 2x plus 11. If we go through and distribute here, radical 5x plus 1 times radical 5x plus 1 is a 5x plus 1. All right, next, when we go through and distribute here, radical 5x plus 1 times negative 1 is a negative 1 radical 5x plus 1. We'd have another one in the middle here. When we distribute the negative 1, we get negative 1 radical 5x plus 1. And then the negative 1 times the negative 1 is a positive 1. Oh, actually, that's not what we want to do. So now that we got that FOILed out, we want to go through and isolate the new radical here. We have a negative 1 and a negative 1. Negative 1 make a negative 2 radical 5x plus 1. And we're going to move some things over here. We're going to move the 5 over, and then we'll move the minus 1 over, and also minus another 1 over. So let's see, 2 minus 5 is negative 3, and 11 minus 1 and minus another 1 is, oh, this minus 3x. 11 minus 1 is a 9. Okay, we got to repeat this now because we need to get rid of this radical, so we square both sides. So we're going to have to write out the negative 3x plus 9 twice. And then FOIL this out. Let's see, negative 2 squared is 4. And then times by the radical 5x plus 1. All right, now let's distribute here. Negative 3x times negative 3x is a 9x squared. Negative 3x times 9 is a negative 27x. Negative 3x, or 9 times negative 3x is also negative 27x. And then negative 9 times 9 is a positive 81. And when we distribute the 4 to the 5x plus 1, we get a 20x plus 4. Okay, we can combine like terms here and get our quadratic problem now. We have 9x squared. If we minus this 20x over, we would have negative 27 minus 27, and then minus, that would be negative 74x. We can subtract 4 from 81, and we would get a positive 80, not 80, positive 77. All right, so now we need to factor this. So we're going to figure out, okay, what two numbers multiply together to give us, well, what 9 times 77 is. 9 times 77 is 693, and add together to get negative 74. So one's got to be positive, one's going to be negative. I don't know. I'm going to just start out with like 18 and keep going up by 9. So 693 divided by 18. No, what about 693 divided by 7? 693 divided by 7. 7 and 99. No, let's see. What about 21? 693 divided by 21. 21 and 33. No. What? 693 and 11. 11 and 63. There we go. So it'd have to be a negative 11 and negative 63. All right, so we got an x minus 11 and an x minus 63, but we need to divide them both by 9 because that's the number in front. All right, so this does not divide here, so we'd get a 9x minus 11. And then this one does, we get an x minus 7, 0. All right, so we got to solve both of these here. This one would be if we add 11 over and divide by 9, it'd be 11 over 9. This one here, all we need to do is add 7 over, and that equals 7. So we got our two answers. We need to plug them back into the original problem to see if they both work out or if only one works out. Let's plug 7 back in. That's the easy one. What's the square root of 2 times 7 plus 11 minus the square root of 5 times 7 plus 1? See if that equals negative 1. Let's see, that'd be 14 plus 11. That's 25. The square root of 25 is 5. Minus 5 times 7 is 35 plus 1 is 36. That'd be 6. And that does equal. Okay, so that works out. The other thing, we'll have to take a calculator out to do the 11 over 9. All right, 2 times 11 over 9 plus 11 is, and then take the square root of that. We get 3.666 repeating minus, all right, now plug in 5. 5 times 11 over 9 plus 1, 7.111. We'll take the square root of that is 2.66 repeating. If we subtract those, that equals a positive 1, so no, that doesn't work, which makes sense. Fractions usually never work out nice. All right, so there's your answer. And this would be the one worth the most amount of points. So you got to make sure you show your work. You can't just plug it into Mathway, get it, because your Mathway is going to skip all this work here. It's going to jump right into that answer, and you won't get points for that. All right, last problem here is how do we solve this? And there's two different ways to do this. We'll try to do this the big brain way, break this down. Okay, what we need to do is remember that we kind of have this radical here that we need to isolate. So we're going to first, to the 2/3 power, we're going to add the 128 over to the other side. Next thing we're going to do is divide by 2. So we got 6x minus 3 to the 2/3 power equals, okay, if we divide 128 by 2, that's 64. All right, so now to get rid of a radical like that, we need to take it to the opposite power, so we need to take it to the 3/2 power. So in the calculator, make sure you type in like 64 to the, and you have to put it in parentheses, 3 divided by 2 power. So we get a 6x minus 3, busting out the calculator here, 64 to the 3 divided by 2 power, in parentheses, because if you don't put it in parentheses, you'll get the wrong number. That is 512. All right, so we're going to add 3 over to the other side. So 6x is equal to 515. And then we'll divide that by 6. So 515 divided by 6. Does that come out nice? Not really. We'll math, enter that. Yeah, and that's all it is. It actually yet doesn't divide. It's just 515 over 6. Probably will come out nice on the test. All right, guys, so there's the review. Hopefully you guys can do this. There is an optional review as well if you want to do it, and I will see you guys for the test. Have a good one.